over the next couple of minutes, Siba and I, we would like to share with you those solutions that actually work in infrastructure safety to increase safety of all road users. If you just have a quick look on the next slide, I can show you what we have in mind with you during our presentation. We will present you the principles of safe speed design, and then we will jump directly into solutions and benefits. And to make a nice package, a nice parcel for you, we have prepared some case studies to show you what infrastructure solutions actually really work. If you go to the next slide, for us, and evidence shows it, the most important thing we need to consider when selecting safe speeds is the road users. And we have to always, whenever we start implementing whatever solution, we have to ask ourselves, who are the road users? Who are the current road users, and what road users are we designing and building the actual roads for? And as you see it on the pictures, this can be very, very different. And we need to consider who the actual road users are, no matter how the road is located in the functional classification system. Because the type, the quality, and the volume of the vehicles and the experience of the road users is very unique depending on the country that you work in, depending on the region that you work in. It's of course influenced by socioeconomics. It's also influenced by the affordability of modern vehicles and country level policies. And this needs to be considered. And this makes a huge difference whether you design a pretty similar road in a high income context or in a medium to low income context. Traffic mix is heterogeneous and usually has a very high variation in travel speed. And we often see that still we don't see separate facilities for separate road user groups. Which leads to obviously a high proportion of crashes and injuries, especially amongst vulnerable road users. In general, what we see in many countries that we work with is that there is a huge need for higher standards of design and infrastructure provisions. So wherever you are, whatever you plan, please think about what road users we are designing and building the roads for, and have this shift in thinking in mind that we don't plan roads only for motorized vehicles and for motorized traffics. We, especially in urban environments, should plan for vulnerable road users. We should plan for pedestrians, for cyclists, also for motorcyclists, for children, for people with disabilities. So please keep this in mind. If we jump directly to the next slide, we should consider 4 main principles of safe speed design. As I already said, that's the road use. We should design for actual road use and not intended road use. And this is very, very important, because I was also, as an engineer, socialized to design for intended road use. But this doesn't help us in our current situation. We need to design for the actual road use that's currently there, that's currently here, and if we have pedestrians and cyclists present, we need to design for them. The second principle is inclusiveness. We need to design for all the road users, with a special attention for the most vulnerable road users. So we need, as you see here on the small picture, we should create cycle lanes when they are necessary. We should create pedestrian footpaths, and we should also think that also amongst vulnerable road users, we might see conflicts. Think of cyclists and pedestrians, for example. We heard about that in the last session, where we saw that these conflicts exist. So if you have a shared cycling and pedestrian infrastructure, be aware that this might not be the best solution. So maybe a better solution is to actually mix cycling traffic with motorized vehicles and bring speed limits down below 30 kilometers per hour, because then you make space for pedestrians. If we get to the next slide, we see another two principles. One that's extremely important, in my opinion, is clarity. We as designers need to meet road users' expectations. There is one thing that road users, including myself, we don't like, and this is being surprised while being on the road, while driving, while walking, while being on our bikes. This is horrible to experience surprises. So this brings me back to the self-explaining road, where you, with advanced warning signs, with specific road markings, just guarantee the clarity of the road and the road design. And finally, homogeneity. We want to have limited interactions between various road user groups traveling at different speeds, in different directions, and with different masses and sizes. And that's what I said before. Even if we think not only motorized vehicles and unmotorized road users, we also have to think, for example, of pedestrians and cyclists, because these road users obviously travel with different speeds and sometimes also travel in different directions. So we should limit the interactions between these different road user groups. Next slide, please. And I think this is a very nice picture that shows what infrastructure can do for you. We see here a pretty standard sort of road. You see the cars driving by. We know, or at least our team knows, that there is a school close by. So the obvious thing to do is to bring speed limits down. We heard in school zones we would bring speed limits down to 30 kilometers per hour to protect our kids, to protect the kids walking to school, crossing the roads. So if we jump directly to the next slide, the first thing we would need to do is to put up a speed limit sign. That's important. That's what Alina also said. Putting up a speed limit sign, informing road users what we expect of them, is the first important thing we could do. But obviously some road users are distracted, they don't see the sign. So maybe the speed limit sign is simply not enough, and this is where infrastructure kicks in. And if we just click once more, you can see what infrastructure can do in these concrete contexts. You see what we've made here. We created a road that's more narrow, that looks more narrow. We created here some rumble strips, also raised crossings, so people can safely cross, vehicles slow down, and at the intersection we reorganize the road space to actually have vehicles move in the way that we have intended. And what's also nice here, you can see curb extensions, because these curb extensions allow, especially in school zones, for pupils to be seen when they cross the road, and they give the drivers the impression that the road gets narrower, which brings their speeds down. So you see, with rather simple improvements, also only by road markings in some of the cases, you can do so much good. But the first thing obviously is to put up the sign and then support the speed limit that you would like to have in a certain area with infrastructure interventions. Next slide, please. There is a number of things that you can do that actually influence the speeds of road users. I have made a table here that you can have a look at, because you can match road design and speed by choosing road design and layout characteristics that either decrease or increase speed. And there is a couple of things that you can do here that are summarized on the slide. And I think some of them are rather intuitive, but others aren't that much, because you wouldn't necessarily think about these. And maybe I would recommend that you take a more detailed look at this slide and just see what infrastructure design characteristics that are already there would decrease or increase your driving speed. And you can make use of these when redesigning your road. So even if you don't put up any significant other infrastructure or don't have money to put this up, you can, by actually matching road design layouts and characteristics, can actually do much good for decreasing driving speeds of the vehicles there. Next slide. Because if we want to look a little more into detail into this knowledge, you can use the knowledge to manage speed on horizontal deflection and on vertical deflection, because you create these interventions to reduce vehicle speeds. And Siba, my colleague, will show a little later on more about that. And the other thing you could use, and this is shown on the next slide, Alina already touched it, you could use the knowledge on road surfaces, on the road narrowing, because we know narrower roads will decrease driving speeds, as well as uneven road surfaces. And with this, I will hand it over to Siba for her to continue based on what we heard from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for the third session. So yes, as Eva mentioned, there are different ways you can calm traffic and lower speeds physically with the infrastructure. And I'll walk you through some of these. And through the slide earlier, we saw that you're pretty familiar with most of these measures already. So that's great to know. We have here some that are, widely used, like the speed humps or curb extensions, and maybe ones that are still newer to be used, like the chicanes and the chokers. We'll talk about all of those very briefly in a minute. Next. So starting with the vertical deflection, and Eva touched on this briefly, one way to force cars to slow their speeds is using vertical deflection measures. These tend to be amongst the most impactful or effective in lowering speeds because they are self-enforcing. They literally force this obstruction or interruption that would force drivers to slow while crossing through, so they don't cause damage on their vehicles or any abrupt movement for themselves and those in their vehicles. These are usually also when used in certain ways, like raised crosswalks or intersections, also give more priority and visibility to pedestrians. So that's another advantage for them. Now, on the other side, they do have some disadvantages. For example, with emergency vehicles, because they work pretty well, they do lower the speeds of traffic. Emergency vehicles like ambulances or fire trucks might have some trouble with that because they will be slowing down their movement to get to action. So that's something to keep in mind when implementing in what areas they're being implemented. It's also important to implement those or build those the right way to lower impact as much as possible on vehicles. That they should also be implemented with enough advanced warning and signage to make it clear for the vehicles that there's this obstruction or traffic calming coming up, to avoid any hazards and crashes, but also to make sure that they're doing their job, because that's the point. If a vehicle does not know that there's a speed hump, for example, coming up, they will not be able to slow down. And if they take one of these traffic calming measures at a high speed, that causes a lot of hazards. Also, they have to be fitted properly to make sure they're not causing any traffic. Sometimes because, again, they work pretty well, they might cause vehicles and drivers to avoid that certain road and go to other parallel roads, which will cause traffic and potentially speeds on those other roads. That's why any intervention of this kind should be done in a more network approach. So assessing the full road network around, see if they need to be implemented in one road, maybe also they need to be implemented in other roads unless a lower speed on those roads is not needed. Next. Now I'll walk you through. You can hit next again, Stephanie. Thank you. Walk you through some of these examples more in detail. The speed humps are amongst the most known, but also most effective, but can be also most controversial. They don't always have a great reputation, mostly because they work well, but also they can create some noise in residential areas. But there are some measures that could be taken and be considered in order to lower the negative impacts of the speed humps, starting with the placement. So these speed humps need to be placed very with thought, with a clear thought process ahead. So they have to be implemented in areas where we really want to lower speed limits. School zones, residential areas, or even slightly main roads or higher speed roads that have a high volume of vulnerable road users and pedestrians, where we really know we need to lower speed limits, because on high speed roads, they're going to cause hazards and more conflicts. Also, their design should be studied properly. It should be done in a way that would minimize impact. So it's a balance between making sure that a car would be slowed down, but with a minimal impact on the make of the car, but also on those that are inside the vehicle. But also the design have to take into consideration the speed limit that is in the area that we want to reach. Different speed limits require different design of the height, the depth of the speed humps, and the angle. Lastly, as I mentioned earlier, advanced warning and markings on the speed humps are extremely important. These need to be seen in order to be effective, but also in order to avoid any hazards or conflicts. Next. Next slide, please. You can hit next, I think there's several. Thank you. Speed table is another form of vertical deflection traffic calming. These are pretty similar to speed humps, except they have a different design. They have a flat top, and they have a less abrupt transition on the sides, which makes them also very effective, yet with less of the impact. The negative impact on vehicles makes them more acceptable, especially for emergency vehicles, because they can go up and down more smoothly without the abrupt movement. Also, they can be very versatile because of their design and flat top. They can double as raised intersections or raised crosswalks, which are very helpful for pedestrian safety. They increase their visibility on these areas and make them more of a priority in any road they are implemented. Next. The speed cushions are sort of a speed hump, except it's not continuous. It has disruptions in the middle. The difference is that they have to be designed in a way that is slightly wider than a regular car to still force it to go over and not avoid it and lower the speed limits. The intention of these usually is to design them and still allow drainage, because a full implementation of a speed hump can intervene with drainage in certain areas when it's added to the road after it was built. So that's one way to avoid drainage issues, but also they usually used to allow cyclists to pass through without any impact or hazard on them. But on the other side, their advantage and what can impact their effectiveness is the fact that big trucks would have wider wheels can avoid them, which allows them to still go at high speeds. Same for motorcycles that are smaller, of course, and they can go through at a high speed, which causes does not allow them to do their job and lower the speeds for these vehicles. Next. Now let's look at the horizontal deflection tools. These are again can be very effective, especially that they don't have much of a negative influence on emergency vehicles because there's no vertical interruption or abrupt movement. The changes are mostly on the sides, so that's great. It does not impact access in general. However, they can impact, especially some designs like chicanes that are in an S shape, they can impact the movement of very long vehicles like a fire truck, for example. Next. We start talking about chokers and chicanes. These are more or less similar with a slight difference. So both are curb extension at a certain point along the road. The chicane happens to be a parallel curb extension, narrowing of the road at the same point, while chokers is more of an offsetting curve. So an extension followed by another to create this S shape that I mentioned earlier. They both can be effective. They narrow the road. They alert drivers that this is not a road to drive at a high speed through, so without impacting access. They don't impact the movement of cyclists, which is great and allow for the safety of the different users throughout. But again, as I mentioned before, might be an issue for some longer trucks. And you see here in the first picture, no trucks are allowed, which could be part of the whole design. Some of the low traffic residential roads want to avoid the passage of big trucks and big vehicles, so that is effective as well. In some cases, we can add some vertical elements like small trees or shrubs to increase the visibility of these traffic calming measures and make them more effective. Next. Another form of curb extensions are those that happen at an intersection, at the corners. The main purpose of this is to slow down the movement of turning vehicles. It forced them to slow down as they turn, but also it forced them to turn into a crosswalk at a perpendicular movement, as you see here in the bottom photo, the orange car. Now, because of how narrow the curb extension is and the turn is, the angle of the corner is, then a car has to go at a perpendicular movement. So anyone who's in the crosswalk will be more visible to the driver, which increases safety. Other positive results of this is that a crosswalk is shorter, so the crossing distance is shorter. We're gaining more space at the corners for pedestrians, lowering any conflict and narrowing the road at this moment. In some cases, this might be an issue for trucks or school buses, but then this is where we can include truck aprons, which are a smooth edge of the curb that can be added. They're easy for a big truck with a bigger wheel to pass on, but a regular vehicle cannot go through. So this is one of the solutions for this issue. Next. Next, we have the lane narrowing, which I'm sure you all are familiar with. This can be done very simply with simple paint, or it can be done with adding curb and taking back the space. This is a very impactful tool because it does give the perception that to driver that it is not safe for them to go at a high speed through the road. So that's extremely impactful. But also it allows us to gain back more space for other infrastructure. So this space can be used for adding sidewalks or adding buffer and bike lanes, refuge islands, medians, which allow us to also minimize the crossing distance and create a different type of road, sometimes also adding parking, which also adds to the effectiveness of creating the perception of a narrower road that needs to be slower. Sorry. Next. Now let's look at one treatment where we put everything together, or some of these tools together. This is an example from India. This is one of the biggest intersections, pretty outrageous. You can see in the picture top left, the road is extremely wide. It's not clear where vehicles should go, where pedestrians can go. Vehicles and motorcycles are going in different directions. Very dangerous. I cannot imagine myself crossing in this area. In the left bottom picture, you see a treatment, a beginning treatment, which was a temporary traffic calming approach using paint and traffic cones, which started by regaining the space back to pedestrians and other vulnerable road users away from the vehicles, realigning and demarcating the road, marking the crosswalks, making these curb extensions on the side, so it clearly narrows and identifies where vehicles should go, where the rest of the space would be for pedestrians. The photo next on the right shows how it is today. Sorry, we're still on the photo on the right this is how it was translated from the temporary traffic calming using paint and cones to actual curb and concrete built in place with plants, etc. You see the islands were expanded on the sides. The roads are narrower. The crosswalks faded a little bit, which means that they do need maintenance, but the movement is definitely way less chaotic. It's clear where pedestrians should go, and it's much safer and manageable and clear for all road users at this point. Next. Another special case, and Alina had hinted on those a little bit at the beginning, are school zones. So this is one of the areas where traffic calming would be most impactful, most needed. But in addition to the typical traffic calming infrastructure tools, it is important to rely on signage and marking that you are entering a school zone, because any mistake here can be really costly, because there are children that are small that can be easily missed by a driver or have an unexpected movement on the road. So relying on road markings, identifying that this is a school zone, using clear colors and signage that is, with advanced warning and flashing warning to remind of the speed, especially in certain times of the day when the children are out on the road, are extremely important. Next. Lastly, this is again one example where we put everything together for a school zone. This is more or less an ideal example where we used a lot of the traffic calming measures and the infrastructure to identified this is a lower speed zone. You see here the lanes were narrowed, the extra space was used with planted buffers and bike lanes. There's clear signage on the road and marking on the road, identifying that this is a room for school children to be crossing. There's the warning signage, raised and high visibility crosswalks. You see here at 1. We have protected intersections where the turning radius is minimized, which ensures that any vehicles, especially buses, are going at a slower speed and can have all those that are crossing at the crosswalks visible. We have, of course, the separated bike lanes and the trees and all the landscaping, which increases this impression of a narrower road where higher speeds are not encouraged. Wide sidewalks with the right furniture also prioritizes pedestrians and makes them more visible to vehicles. That's it for the infrastructure tools. Back to you, Stephanie. Thank you.